What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I have another corruption video for you. This is going to be kind of a twofer, since both of these corruptions serve a similar purpose, but are kind of niche in terms of usage. If you have mind-reading powers, or, I don't know, maybe read the title of the video, then you'll know we are talking about Strikethrough and Deadly Momentum this time. You would think with how crazy people are over Severe that they'd be using these corruptions too, right? Well, actually, most of the time, no. And I'm here to explain why. If you end up enjoying the video, it'd be really awesome if you maybe checked out my other ones. I've got quite a few of them, and I have a new one up every weekday at 6 AM Pacific time. We'll start with Deadly Momentum, which is a crit-based corruption that has a chance on critical hit to give you a stacking amount of crit strike, and stacks up to 5 times. This can be extended indefinitely, so it can potentially have exceptionally high uptime. So why wouldn't a crit stacking class be interested in this? Well, the problem in itself is that it has to be a critical hit to even have a chance to proc the effect, which means you need to be hitting with crits very often to keep 5 stacks rolling. I know what you're thinking, but Mr. Red Rogue, sir, you say. I'm a BM hunter with like 18 bajillion crit and run the Dance to Death build. Why is this so much less popular than Severe? Well, my friend, you kinda answered your own question there. If you're a BM hunter, or really any spec that needs an absurdly large amount of crit for their builds, the percent bonus you gain from Severe far outweighs the DPS to corruption value of Deadly Momentum. On top of that, you don't need to worry about any ramp up time for the stacks, or to keep up the uptime of the buff, which is high, but it's not 100% high, especially in Mythic Plus. If your gear was lacking crit though, then you might see better usage of this corruption, since Severe becomes more effective the more crit you already have. This holds true for multiple specs, such as Feral Druids with their extremely potent Azerite trait, Jungle Fury, which gives a massive amount of crit every time they use Tiger's Fury. Other classes that normally have crit as their top stat, such as Outlaw Rogue, end up just wearing DPS corruptions like Twilight Devastation or the Unduent Crest, as they're far more potent than just stat corruptions for them. This principle holds true for quite a few specs in general, honestly. Another downside to Deadly Momentum I brought up briefly is its ineffectiveness in Mythic Plus, as there's often downtime between boss pulls or trash packs, which means you're almost guaranteed to lose your stacks and have to start over often, which is very inconvenient when you need on-demand burst for pulls, and you're kind of just not getting as much crit as you should out of the corruption. So the question is, who would want to use this corruption on a consistent basis? Oh wow, this is a nice seashell, look at this! Hey, listen, do you hear that? If you hold it up to your ear and listen really closely, you can hear raiding Mistweaver monks crying in the distance.
Got him!
All joking aside, much respect to any healers out there, as you do the job not many of us want to do. I tried it before, it didn't end too well. I'm the Red Rogue for a reason, not the Red Healer. Everybody else was red because I was the healer. Anyways, Mistweavers make very effective use of this, as they're one of the few raid healers that doesn't stack Ineffable Truth, and also uses crit as one of their top stats. Since Deadly Momentum procs off of critical hits, this also includes healing, which in a raid scenario with 20 or more people means it's basically impossible not to stay at 5 stacks. This in turn has excellent synergy with Severe, further increasing their total amount of crit and the effectiveness of the Deadly Momentum buff. While Holy Priests can make effective use of this, as crit is a potent stat for them, it is more common best practice to just stack Ineffable Truth instead for raiding, so as to increase cooldown usage during encounters. Oh, and as a side note, the buff does not stack if you're not in combat, so you can't just spam heals in between trash pulls in Mythic Plus to try and keep it rolling, sorry. That, and obviously you should be wearing DPS corruptions in Mythic Plus anyhow, because that's all that really matters anymore, right? So now that we've revealed basically the only spec that makes highly effective use of Deadly Momentum, let's do the same thing for Strikethrough. Strikethrough is a corruption similar to those benthic boots everyone was obsessed about in Eternal Palace, as they increase the amount of crit damage and crit healing you do by a flat percent. This is another one that, on paper, sounds like anyone who uses crit would love. Well, again, I'm afraid not. Basically, the only 3 relevant specs that can use this effectively are Feral Druids, Elemental Shamans, and Outlaw Rogues. So let's break this down as to why. The most common thing between these 3 specs is the heavy usage of the essence Blood of the Enemy, especially in AoE scenarios. Blood of the Enemy is an AoE burst effect that'll make any enemies hit by it take more crit damage and be more likely to be crit. This choice of essence does change for Elemental Shamans on single target raid encounters, but in general this is a popular major essence to run. They all also have some source of high crit chance or just passive crit bonuses, which further fuels the usage of Strikethrough. For Feral Druids, this is again a result of their exceptional stacking of crit, on top of their usage of the Azerite trait Jungle Fury. Between these two, they already have an exceptional amount of crit, meaning being able to do a flat increase to their crit damage is very nice. They also have multiple talents that increase the damage of their moves, such as Blood Talons, which increases damage by 25%, meaning these critical hits will deal even more damage with Strikethrough. For Elemental Shamans, the desire for a high crit build is fueled by the Elemental Fury passive, which increases the damage a critical hit does from 200% to 250%. They also have a popular stackable Azerite trait, which gives a sizable amount of stats, including crit, depending on the type of element you hit your enemies with. Lastly, and the reason I was making this video in the first place, is Outlaw Rogues. Outlaw Rogues use crit as their primary stat, as well as trinkets such as the Ashvane's Razor Coral or the Deadeye Spyglass, so we quite often have a high amount of crit. The real reason why Strikethrough is so potent though, is because of our Roll the Bones buff Ruthless Precision, or Shark Infested Waters if you're an OG. This buff increases the crit chance of all moves by 20%, but more importantly, it increases the crit chance of Between the Eyes by 60%. The reason this is so important is because Between the Eyes deals quadruple damage when it crits, which can often mean it hits a 200k or even higher. This is even more important because when Between the Eyes is affected by Blade Flurry, it will hit all other targets near it for 35% of that damage. So yeah, it's pretty easy to get some big hits off of this move, so increasing its damage is even more badass. Oh, and before I forget, which I nearly did, do not use Strikethrough as a BM hunter. Seriously. It does not affect your pet's damage, therefore it doesn't affect like over 60% of your damage, so just don't wear it. It's literally like tying a lead weight to your leg and trying to run a marathon. It's pointless. And just making your life difficult for no reason. Don't do it. I hope that clears the air on these somewhat niche corruptions. If you are a spec that uses crit, they're honestly not terrible corruptions to have. There are just much better options available. Except if you're a BM hunter. Just don't do it. Anyways, I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, feel free to leave a comment, or maybe even a like or a sub if you're feeling extra saucy. Thank you so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.